My name is Emily Leonardo. I'm 25 years old. I'm a certified recovery specialist, a treatment advocate, and most importantly, I am a woman in recovery. My clean date is July 29th, 2016. That gives me a little over 4.5 years of complete abstinence from all mind and mood altering chemicals. No smoking, no drinking, no pills, nothing. It's crazy. So why complete abstinence for me? Complete abstinence is important for me specifically because I know why I use drugs. I know why I drank alcohol. I know exactly why I used. And it started for me as a kid. 13, 14, 15, a little bit 16, I had a lot of behavioral problems, a lot of serious and some feeble suicide attempts, lots of cries for help, didn't really know what was going on with me, didn't really know how to fix what was going on with me. Found myself kind of a loner. And the reason that I found myself a loner was because I didn't like me. I didn't expect you to like me. Therefore, I didn't like you or the reality of what was going on around me. Self-acceptance was really, really hard for me in my early teenage years. And I didn't have a lot of friends that I trusted or believed in to talk to. I feel like a lot of my struggles are like typical teenage struggles, but for me, I looked for a constant way to escape them by any means. At one point, I was introduced to drugs. Now, it started as recreational drug use, experimental. I didn't have friends until I started like hanging out with people who would smoke pot and drink alcohol. And all of a sudden I was smoking pot and I was drinking alcohol. And I knew what addiction was. I had seen it in certain areas of my family. You see it on TV, kind of hear a little bit about it growing up. I had this idea that if you were dirty and homeless and didn't have your family, that you weren't employable, you're living on the streets, you're smoking crack cocaine or shooting heroin, then you're an addict. But I didn't consider the fact that anybody could get addicted to drugs or alcohol. I also didn't consider the fact that while physical dependency is very, very serious, that my addiction started way before I was physically dependent on any substance. My addiction started more when I was about 16, and I was mentally dependent on smoking pot and drinking. It made me feel good. It made me feel better than I could feel without it. I wasn't happy before the drugs. I found the drugs. Now I have moments of fleeting, what I think is happiness. And I think that I found the solution to my problem. Well, joke's on me. My story starts with drinking alcohol and smoking marijuana recreationally to going to parties where other people are trying different things. Pills from the medicine cabinet, a little bit of cocaine here and there. And while it was readily available to me, I was trying anything, and I pretty much loved all of them. There were some negative repercussions to some of the drugs that I've used in my past, and I just overlooked it because I love the feeling that much. I loved the feeling of not thinking and not feeling. So like I said, my mental dependency started very young. I graduated, if you will, from using alcohol, marijuana, and some pills here and there, some cocaine here and there, to more serious drugs like hallucinogens. So I had this boyfriend. He would come home on the weekends from college. He would bring acid and Molly and all of the different experimental chemical drugs that have the crazy combinations of letters and numbers that you can't really keep up with. I loved those. I learned that the stigma behind different drugs or alcohol wasn't what I grew up thinking that it was. So I'll share this red flag with you. I was 16 years old. We were taking Molly or something, some type of research something. And we had been rolling for over 8 hours. And at one point, everybody was done. It was the morning. They were ready to go to sleep, ready to feel a little bit better, drink some water and take care of yourself and move on with your life. But me, I was like, there's more, isn't there? I wasn't done. There was no such thing as me being done using. And hindsight is 2020. That is a serious red flag that I had overlooked that now I see clearly. So 16, 17 years old, I've tried a bunch of things, experimented with a bunch of different drugs and alcohol, but it wasn't until I was using some benzos and smoking marijuana with a group of people who introduced me for the first time to heroin. Now, like I said, drug addicts, I had this idea, this stigma behind what a drug addict was or an alcoholic. So for me, they looked a certain way, smelled a certain way, talked and walked a certain way, and all of the outside things looked a certain way. So these kids that were using heroin still had families and cars and their little jobs while they're in school. And I didn't even think anything of it. Well, they don't look like a heroin addict. They don't talk or walk like a heroin addict. They're still doing things with their lives. So how bad could heroin really be? My life kind of goes in like blurry phases where I remember certain events and certain things that happen. But mostly I remember the way that I felt in those moments and in those phases and chapters of my life. So in the beginning of my heroin use, it was all fun and games. I would go to school, I would be high. I would go home, I would be high. I was sniffing heroin here and sniffing it there and getting it for free and then only paying for it a little bit. And I didn't start to notice that I was becoming physically dependent. I'd start to get cranky, moody, which is nothing new for me. I'm very cranky and moody. So I didn't really think anything of it if I didn't have it for a little bit of time. I remember walking to my dealer's house, mind you, I was 17, like, I just need to use a little bit and I'll feel better. Just need to use a little bit and I'll feel better. It was probably at this point when I started to realize that there was some type of physical something going on, but definitely didn't attribute it to a physical dependency that would ultimately result in withdrawal if I didn't use. Down the line, I ended up dating someone who introduced me to Percocet 30s. I told myself that if I started to use Perc 30s, it would be way better because a doctor prescribes it. So I went a little bit of what people would consider backwards from heroin into Percocet 30s, which was a really expensive habit and it didn't last long for me. How did I justify it? Well, I told the guy I was dating at the time, why would we buy Percocet 30s for $30 a pop if we can buy X amount of heroin for that same amount and we could both get high? And so began my journey with this poor man into a deeper level of active addiction. Very quickly after we had started using heroin together, I had some sort of episode. I don't recall the details of it. I remember little things. I remember being followed by police across county lines. I remember my family being very worried. I remember wanting to kill myself. I remember wanting to jump off of a bridge that is local to me. I remember being intercepted by the police. I remember being in the hospital, not getting there, but being in the hospital room with this man that I was dating, and the doctor coming in and wanting to tell me about all the things I had, you know, in my system from when they took my blood and my urine. And I remember it being a joke, because clearly I know about all of the drugs that are in my system, but that wasn't what he was coming to tell me. He was coming to tell me that I was pregnant. "18 years old, in the middle of active addiction, living in my mom's basement, just dropped out of school, out of high school, and I was pregnant." But no red flags to me. I said, all right, we're keeping the baby, right? But the doctor told me, he said, if you keep this baby, it's going to be underdeveloped if it lives through the withdrawal. And he also told me that if I would have just kept using, I would never have known that I was pregnant. I would have just killed the fetus and kept going. Did I let this deter me from using? No, of course not. I'm in full-blown active addiction. At first, I told myself, this is the opportunity to change my life. I'm gonna have a baby. I'm gonna be a mommy. And that's what I wanted. I wanted to be a mom. I grew up with a great mom, so I knew I always wanted to be a mom. So I was 302'd for a couple days. And at the time, I thought that I couldn't sleep and I had restless legs and was feeling kind of nauseous and I was constipated because I knew that I was pregnant and I was nervous. Hello, I was going through serious withdrawal and I didn't even know. I had a journal and I was writing the whole time I was there. I was writing like notes to my baby or whatever, but in there I can read that I was going through physical symptoms of withdrawal, knew that I was pregnant, but I left there and I continued to use. Nobody said to me, Emily, you have a drug problem. This is what I can do to help you. These are the paths that you could and should take. No one was there to identify with me, but I also wasn't very honest with people, so they couldn't really tell me how to fix something if I didn't tell them what was broken. I left the behavioral health unit and I continued on my way using whatever I could get my hands on. I did end up having a child. I was blessed with a baby boy, and he is perfectly happy and healthy and very smart. I am so blessed, and he is so blessed. Despite what the doctor told me could happen, the opposite happens, and I can only attribute that to the universe looking out for him. It's not about me. But I continued to use after I had him, and so this man that I was dating, which was his dad, his mom came once and was like, you guys, you need to get your lives together or I'm going to come and I'm going to take your baby. So sure enough, we went and tried to get our lives together. Now for me, in my story, I didn't stay very long in treatment. It was my first time. I used every excuse that I could to not be there, and one of them was my very, very young son. Reality was I wasn't able to be a mom for him in that moment. And I'm very blessed that my mom took very good care of my son until I got clean for years. At this point in life, I had been to treatment 2 times. I left both times early, used any and every excuse that I could to not be there because reality was I didn't want to stop getting high. And when I left the second time, someone had messaged me on Facebook and said, hey, I got this for this much. And whatever the amount was, I was like, wow, that's really cheap. That's a good deal. Let's go get high. Well, I met up with the guy. He wasn't trying to sell me heroin. He was trying to sell me meth. So at this point, I subliminally knew that I had a pattern. And my pattern was I liked every single mind and mood altering chemical I could put in my body that would take me out of reality. So when the guy told me, oh, I'm not trying to sell you heroin, I'm trying to sell you meth, I said, okay. And I tried it. And honestly, the first time I tried it, I absolutely hated it. I couldn't wait to come down. But then I did it a second time, and a third, and a 10th, and a 100th. And I quickly fell very much in love with methamphetamine. I tried to substitute my love for heroin with my new love for methamphetamine. And I told myself, well, as long as I'm not shooting dope, anything's better than that. But I didn't realize that substituting one for the other was just as bad. I also found myself in a lot of scary situations. I found myself around people who were dangerous. I found myself doing really reckless things. It didn't take very long for me to jump back into my heroin addiction. So I was using heroin and meth. I was in an abusive relationship. I completely lost my son, lost my car, lost my license, had been to jail. All of these things were just falling apart around me. Now, don't forget, let's backpedal a little bit. I had this idea of what an addict looked like, walked like, talked like, smelled like, and all of the things on the outside that were just indicators that this person is an addict or an alcoholic. And I finally saw them in myself. There were some points prior to this where I was like, oh yeah, like I could totally change. Like I could stop if I wanted to. It's not that bad. I could live in the lies. I could live in the denial up until this point. And this wave just washed over me where I was like, wow, I am everything that I said I wouldn't be. And I have done everything that I said I wouldn't do. And all of those morals and all of those values, the integrity, the honesty, like the selflessness, all of those things that I wanted to be on the inside, those things that would make Emily proud of Emily, ceased to exist. I thought that I was hopeless, but there was always this little tiny inkling of hope. It wasn't enough for me that I had lost my son and lost all of these things on the outside. It wasn't enough for me to have overdosed 3 times. I just loved being outside of myself too much. I couldn't deal with the emotional turmoil that I was in. And despite all of the hospitalizations, overdoses, the multiple doctors that I had seen, any type of professional in any capacity, even my family, my friends, like real friends, not using friends. All the people that I came in contact with on a daily basis, and nobody said, yo, you are out of control. You gotta do something. I know what you're going through. Like, nothing. I'll take that back. There are some people who would check me real bad, like, dude, you're bad. But it wasn't too often that I was hearing that. Somehow down the line, I ended up in a new town with that same abusive ex, and I started smoking crack cocaine. That was one thing that I had never done, never tried it, didn't really think that I would. I hated it at first. And then I loved it. Just like, using methamphetamine for the first time. I just had to use it multiple times to find that if it was taking me out of me, I liked it. So picture this. I am 20 years old in the dead of the summer, smoking crack on the 3rd floor of some crack spot in this area that I was living, sleeping in a dog bed. I swear to God, I mean that literally. I stole the bed from the dog on the 2nd floor. Smoking crack. There were nights where the individual I was living with would be like, hey, I'm going to cop. It's like 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm going to cop. I'll let you know when I'm back. I'll text you. Just be quiet when you sneak out this way. And I would lay there and stare at my phone, but pray at the same time that he came back with nothing. I was using against my will. I was broken, defeated. And all I knew how to do was just stop using drugs and maybe things would get better. And I did. The last time I used against my will was July 28th, 2016. So my clean date is July 29th, 2016. And since then, I have not touched a single drink or drug. I know why I used. I hated reality for what it really is. And these last 4.5 years, I have been living in nothing but reality. I feel everything. I have a lot of thoughts. I'm able to live present in the moment. I am a mother, full-time single mother today. I'm a responsible, productive member of society. I do give back to my community. I was hired at Treatment Trends Center of Excellence in 2018. I was hired and told, go do outreach. And I was like, okay, well, what does that look like? We don't know, but we know that you'll figure it out. Okay. And I did. I was by myself for the first couple of months, and I did a lot of like boots on the ground outreach, working with the homeless, working with some parish nurses until I really got grounded. About 6 months later, they gave me my partner, my work partner, Q, who quickly became like my best friend in the whole entire world. We would do street rounds together. We developed a program with our local police departments. We were doing Blue Guardian, which is an overdose follow-up with the police. We were doing ride-alongs. We were working with EMS. We were working with the hospitals. We were working with the schools. Anywhere that there could be a gap, like whose job is it to do this, that, and the third? Oh, I don't know. Why don't we call Emily and Q? And we were happy to do it. Outreaching to the community, breaking stigma, gaining a new understanding on what addiction could look like, the different pathways to recovery. They have all been a blessing. The biggest thing about being a certified recovery specialist in that outreach program was the level of identification. It is unlike anything in the entire world to literally show up to the police who called us there and EMS who called us there at an overdose scene and say, hey, I know what you're going through. I've been here before. I know how you feel physically after being hit with that Narcan. I know where you're at emotionally and spiritually after running like this in your life. I'm here for you. Tell me what I can do. Or I'm here for you and I'm just going to share how I changed. This is my story. Do you identify? Okay, well then let me walk you through this process where I'll advocate for you in court. I'll help you with children and youth. I'll help you get a job. That identification. advocating for somebody who couldn't advocate for themselves in that moment, giving them a little bit of hope to make it to the next day, the next moment, the next second. That was everything to me. Now I am a treatment advocate for Recovery Centers of America. I am blessed to be able to connect at a little bit of a higher level where I can work with family doctors, lawyers, hospitals, you name it, to say, hey, this is what we're looking for. This is how they may need help, and this is how I can help you help them. Fill in the gaps, connecting the bridge. It's what my whole life has become, and I couldn't ask for more. How can we support the individual that we may already know or that we will eventually know come into the recovery process? It is so important to recognize that there are different pathways to recovery. It is so important to acknowledge a person, no matter where they are in their lives, because they are a person. Compassion fatigue is real. I have experienced it. I'm sure someday you guys will experience it, at least to a certain capacity. But just reminding ourselves that the individuals that we are coming across, dealing with on a daily basis, are just as much human beings as we are, with the same capacity to think and to feel on a deep level, but they're a little bit more lost, will take you a long way. To remind yourself of a time where you just really didn't know what was going on around you, and someone kind of reached out and said, hey, like, let me just give you a little bit of direction here. This is how we're going to go about this. Addicts need that. Alcoholics need that. I think that there's a fine line between loving and caring and a little bit too soft. My style has never been soft. For those who know me. I will be the first one to remind you that if you are an alcoholic and you think that it's okay to drive yourself to the liquor store on a daily basis, that you could crash your car, kill yourself, and kill somebody else. I will be the first person to remind you that if you're shooting or even sniffing heroin, you could overdose and die, and your family will find you. That if you're using methamphetamine and you think that you're not in a normal state of psychosis all of the time, and I say normal because that's usually the normal, you're going to end up in jail. I have made it my job to care about people. You have chosen a career where it is also your job to care about people. Don't forget that. Don't forget how it feels on your worst days. Don't forget how it feels on your best days. And don't forget that we can help people on their worst days get to better days. And maybe that person will help another person. It really could be you who helped someone change their life in the smallest way, and you'd never even know it. And that could change a million other lives. My goal in my life is to save 1 million lives by whatever means possible. And I invite you to join me on the journey. Don't forget to care about each other.